I get it, you've got a deadline looming, a big 3D model to render, and you're staring at a laptop that feels more like a desktop in disguise. You're wondering if splurging on a 17-inch mobile workstation is worth the cash, or if you'll end up lugging around a heavy slab that barely makes a dent in your workload. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through the Dell Precision 70007760 the way I'd explain it to a friend who's on the fence, because the difference between just another laptop and the right tool for the job often comes down to the little things you only notice after you actually use it. First off, the Precision line is Dell's answer to the "I need a laptop that can handle professional-grade software without choking." The 7760 pushes a 12th Gen-ish i7-11850H, 8 cores, 2.5 GHz base clock, and you get a massive 64 GB of DDR4 RAM paired with a 512 GB SSD. On paper that sounds like a monster, and for the right workloads it can be. If you're regularly running multiple instances of AutoCAD, Revit, or Adobe Premiere, that RAM headroom means you can keep a full-size project open, spin up a secondary rendering engine, and still have enough memory for background tasks like file syncing or virtual machines. In real-world terms, I've seen colleagues switch between a high-resolution architectural model and a Photoshop compositing session without the OS throwing a "not enough memory" warning. That kind of fluidity is the core reason a professional would even consider a workstation over a consumer-grade laptop. But the devil lives in the details. The screen is a 17.3-inch Full HD panel, 19201080. That's a decent amount of real estate, great for spreading out toolbars and timelines, but the pixel density is modest compared to 4K options. If your day-to-day involves fine-grained detail work, like pixel-perfect graphic design or high-resolution video editing, you'll notice the lack of crispness. Text can look a tad soft, and color grading work may suffer from limited gamut. It's not a deal-breaker for engineering or data analysis tasks where you're more concerned with screen size than pixel perfection, but it's a trade-off you shouldn't ignore. Weight and portability are the next hidden cost. Dell doesn't list the exact figure here, but a 17-inch workstation with that kind of internals typically tips the scales at around 7 pounds, give or take a few ounces. That means you'll feel it in your backpack, and the battery life is usually modest, often under 5 hours under load. If you're planning to move between client sites, coffee shops, or even just a different office floor, you'll spend a good chunk of the day hunting for a power outlet. For a stationary desk setup in a dedicated office or a home studio, the heft is less of an issue, but for anyone who expects true mobility, that's a serious consideration. Now, about the price. Dell workstations sit in a premium bracket, and you're paying for the certification, the service options, and the reputation of ISV-certified hardware that some software vendors require. The 7760 specs i7, 64 GB RAM, 512 GB SSD could be assembled in a DIY desktop for a fraction of the cost, but the convenience of having it all in a single, rugged chassis does carry value for certain professionals. The catch is the low overall rating you'll see on Amazon, 2.1 out of 5 stars from 15 reviews. While we don't have the exact comments, that score suggests a pattern of disappointment, most likely around the areas we've already touched on: bulk, screen resolution, and perhaps thermal performance under sustained load. In other words, the raw horsepower is there, but the surrounding experience may not meet the expectations set by the headline numbers. So who should actually buy this thing? If you're a mechanical engineer, civil engineer, or 3D artist who spends most of the day in a fixed workstation, needs massive RAM for large assemblies, and can afford a dedicated power source, the Precision 7760 can be a solid workhorse. The large screen helps you keep multiple windows open, and the i7-11850H will handle multi-threaded simulations without throttling, provided you keep the machine plugged in. It also runs Windows 10 Pro out of the box, which is a plus for businesses that need domain integration, BitLocker, and other enterprise features. On the flip side, if you're a freelancer who moves between co-working spaces, a student who needs a portable laptop for classes, or a content creator whose primary concern is color-accurate 4K video, you'll likely be better served by a lighter machine with a higher resolution display. You could get a 15-inch Ultrabook with a 4K panel, comparable CPU performance, and a battery that lasts a full workday. The extra 2-inch